Okay, today I'm going to show you about 7 quilts that I found on Pinterest, and there's no information about these quilts, but I want to show you how we can take each quilt, look at it, and pull the block from that quilt. Now, last time we did the churn dash block, and I showed you step by step how to how to divide it into a grid, find the units in the block, and then find the fabric requirements and how many blocks you need. In this video, I'm just going to show you how to pull these blocks out of these quilts. Start with the first one, and it's a fairly easy one to do. And so on the left-hand side, I'm going to have the quilt, and on the right-hand side, I'm going to have electric quilt because it's easier to draw on this and faster, so you can see, and it's less messy than if I do it on graph paper. But if you have graph paper, you're going to do the same thing. So if you have electric quilt, you can use electric quilt. I'm just using it because it's easier. If we look at this quilt, immediately we can see that we have repeats across the top and down the sides. So it appears to be just one block. Now we're going to look at a block that's closer so we can see it better. One clue you have when you're looking for a block is to look at the points and see where those points end up. Normally, that means that that is the edge of the block. So I'm just going to guess right now to see where the block is. And just draw a square around it, or you can start using your graph paper, and we'll do that in just a second. So if I look at this, where I've drawn the square, and if I look to its neighbor over here, I see that it's the same block, and it's the same block up here. So we can safely say that this is the block for this quilt. The next thing we'll do is turn it into a grid. And so we're going to look at, here is a square. There's one in each corner, square, square, square. And so let's just put a square around the square, like we did with the churn dash block. Then next, let's look at some obvious things. And we see that this is a 16 patch block. There are 4 patches across and 4 patches down. So I'm going to put a big square around that. And what we have left are these 2 half square triangles. And if you look at it, it could be 2 half square triangles, or it could be 1 flying geese unit. And this is where you have to decide, do you want to make flying geese or do you want to make half square triangles? Well, I see that in this block there are 4 flying geese, or 4 sets of half square triangles. So I'm going to use the method, if I'm rotary cutting, my flying geese 4 at a time. So I'm going to call this flying geese. But let's put the grid in there. Let's finish putting the grid in there using these squares as our guide. So we'll just go ahead and draw these extra pieces in here. And now you see we have a 4x4 grid. Well, this is what you would use when you are sizing your block. And here you can use 2 half square triangles if you want, or you can use 1 flying geese unit. And here you can use a 16 patch block, or you can see there are 4 patch units. And there is a 16 patch block calculator under the common units in Quilt Nuts. So you can make life easy for yourself and just use the 16 patch calculator. So let's go over the total number of units in this block. There are 4 squares, and there are 4 flying geese units, or 8 half square triangle units, and there is 1 16 patch unit. So those are the 3 different units you would use for this block. Here's the next one we're going to do. Let's make it bigger. Now, if you look at this, what I see right away is this 4 patch unit here. So I'm going to put a square around that. And then next door to it are these units, and these are 4 cat's cradle units. So here's 1 cat's cradle unit right there. And you can you can make this a 2-block quilt, but some things I have noticed, if you look down here, and we'll just look here for example, you see this fabric is the same as this fabric, and this fabric is the same throughout the block. So if we put a square around this unit, we'll see that that is our block. It's 2 cat's cradle units and 2 square units. So it's easier to use this. It's a single block. You can make 2 of these units at a time. It's faster to cut and faster to piece. So we won't use this. This is not the block for us. You can use those 2 blocks, but we're not going to. And so we see that this is a 2x2 grid. And I just realized I forgot to draw the other quilt on electric quilt. So we'll just start with this one. I'm in the block workbook or work table, and it's a 2x2 grid. So I'm going to click this option for a 2x2 grid, and then it draws a 2x2 grid. Let me move myself out of the way. Put it over here. And if I look over here, here are these 2 squares, so we'll leave these 2 squares. And then over here we have our cat's cradle units, and the squares for the cat's cradle are on the outside. So I'm going to start with the half square triangle, put that in. Then the square is on the outside, so I find the center and I draw my square in. And let's do the same thing down here. Draw the square. Now there's our block. So let's go to color so you can see what's going on here. And I'm just going to choose some random fabrics and just match the fabrics they're using. So the cat's cradle accent fabrics are the same. And then let's put in the square fabric. And how about some background here? So that block is identical to this block. And this block is repeated all through the quilt, and it's just rotated back and forth. So I'm going to save this, and we'll go on to the next block. This is a 2-block quilt, and you can tell that almost right away. The first block is this star. It's an 8-point star, so we'll put a square around that. And right next to it is our familiar 16-patch block. And right away from the 16-patch block, you can see that this is a 4x4 grid. And so this is right next to it. And these squares in the corner are the same size. So this is also a 4x4 grid. And you'll have to make these blocks the same size. And let's go to our electric quilt and let's first draw the 16-patch. So we'll take our 4x4 grid and draw that in. And then we'll color this. This is a very easy one. I'm just going to put alternate colors in just so you can see. So we have an accent fabric and a background fabric. You can choose any 2 fabrics you like. And once you find the block size you want, you just go to the 16-patch calculator on common units and quilt notes, and you can get the fabric requirements for this quilt, for this block. So let's save this, and let's go to the star block. It is also a 4x4 grid, so let's put that in. And again, you can use your flying geese units, or you can use 2 half square triangles. I'm going to put in the 2 half square triangles right now, and I'll show you how you can get rid of these lines that you don't need. So I'm just drawing in the half square triangles, and later we'll turn them into a flying geese unit. Okay, so you see in the corners we have the small squares, just like the picture over here, and then we have our half square triangles, our flying geese units. So I'm going to get rid of some of these lines. If I get rid of this line, you see now we have a flying geese unit. So I'll just get rid of these other ones. And also, this center square, large center square, is not pieced. It's just one square. So we'll take out these lines as well. So there is your 8-point star, and these are flying geese units. In this block, you'll have 4 small squares in the corners. You'll have 1 large square in the center, and you'll have 4 flying geese units, or if you prefer, you'll have 8 half-square triangle units. I want to go ahead and color this for you because I realized I didn't color it. So you just put your colors, your fabrics in like this. And we have the accent fabric is the star points and the large square, and the background fabric are the small squares and the background of the flying geese unit. In this case, it'd be the geese portion of the flying geese unit. All right, so let's save this and let's go on to the next one. Okay, this one's a good one. I can't explode this or I can't enlarge this anymore. So we'll just have to make do with what we have here. When I first looked at this, I could not figure out where the block was until I looked at this block right here. Let me put a square around it. And what drew my attention was I can see that it's just 2 fabrics in this block. It's a dark red and sort of a tan background. So if I look at its neighbor just above, I can see that it's the same thing. It's 2 fabrics, a dark and a light, and then I can start to see, not here very well, but in here you can see that this is a half square triangle in this corner, a half square triangle down here, and 2 pinwheel units. So let's draw it out and it will look, you can see it better if we draw it out. So we'll go here and we've got 2 by 2 and we'll put the grid in there. The first thing I'm going to draw are these 2 half square triangles. I like to do the easy ones first. So we draw 1 there and 1 there. The pinwheel units, they're actually 2 by 2 grid as well. So we'll click on this grid again, 2 by 2, and we'll just put a little mini grid inside this space. And we'll do that on both of these. And for the pinwheel unit, if you draw an X in this grid, this 2 by 2 grid, that is your pinwheel unit. So we just draw the X here and the X here. Oops. So there is our block. Let's color it in. And let's do this. So I'm going to put the dark, let's make it darker. Dark on this side. And then you have to look carefully because I like to match the colors exactly as they are on the image. And so this one is going to go like this. And there is our block. We have 2 half square triangles and 2 pinwheel units. And both of these are on the common units on the Quilt Notes website, so you can figure out your fabric requirements for this. And a 2 by 2 block, 2 by 2 grid, you can practically do any size quilt you like. So let's save this one and go on to the next one. Okay, this one. I know, I love this quilt because it's all plaids. A long time ago, there was this big plaid thing. Everyone was making plaid quilts. But this quilt may look very difficult to do, but there are only 2 units in this quilt. One of the units is 2 different sizes. So I'm going to look down here, and I see this is the block right here. And this is called the economy block. And we have one, this is one of the common units on Quilt Notes. And next to it, we have this. And it's like a diamond in a rectangle, a diamond rec. And this is obviously sashing because here's another one up here. And this is a cornerstone. So you have a block, a sashing, and a cornerstone. The cornerstone is also an economy block. It will be a different size. So if you look at this block, the economy block, and you say, okay, that's going to be an 8-inch block. So this will be 8-inch finished. That means that this is going to be half. The small side of this rectangle will be half. So this will be 4 inches by 8 inch. So that's a 4 by 8 inch diamond in a rectangle. And this would be a 4 inch by 4 inch economy block. So I won't put this on the electric quilt, but I just wanted to show you how you can look at this quilt that looks so hard and difficult to do, and it only boils down to 3 different units. So that's all I wanted to show you on that one. And, oh, this is one. Oh, you're going to love this one. Okay, this one had me stumped for a long, long time. I first thought when I saw this that this would be the block. This big part right in the middle. It's an obvious square, and it's lighter than everything else. And it's actually 4 half square triangles. But then I looked at the outside and thought, this is kind of crazy sashing and cornerstones to be putting on here. And if you look at this block, these fabrics match. So if these were sashing and cornerstone, you would have to match all 4 of these areas. So that cannot be the block. It just can't be that hard. So let me erase that. And so I started looking. I'm going to come down on this part, come down here, and show you the block. That is the block. And here we have our little hint about the points along the edges, and that fits in there perfectly. So you can see we have half square triangles in all 4 corners. We have a 4 patch in the center, and we have 2 of these half rectangle triangles on each side. So we have 2 here, 2, 2, and 2. Now let's draw this out so it will make a lot more sense to you. So a new block. And this is a 3 by 3 grid. So we have 1 here, 2, 3. So it's 3 across and 3 down. So let's put this, let me move this over. This is a 3 by 3 grid. And this is what I do when I think a block is very complicated and I can't quite figure it out. So put in what you know first. And I know that there are half square triangles in each of the corners. But what I also notice is these corners that are opposite each other, there's a dark fabric on the very outer edge. So there's a light and a dark in the half square triangle, and the dark fabrics are pointing out. So let's put those 2 in. We know that what those are, and I'm going to go ahead and color them. And I'm going to use the same colors, even though they're using different colors. So let's go back to draw. And now we have these half square triangles on the other corners, and they have they're light and medium colored. They're much lighter than the other corners. So I'm going to call this light and that medium. And you see that the medium fabrics are pointing inward toward the center of the block. So let's put those half square triangles in and go to color those. And let's just put the darker ones are on the inside and the lighter ones are on the outside. So I'm just going to put this on there. Now, what else? Next we have is this 4 patch right in the very center. So we'll go to our grid again and put in a 2 by 2 grid because that's what a 4 patch is. We'll put our little grid right here in the center. And this is where you have to look closely about the fabric placement and the color placement. These dark fabrics in the 4 patch are following the same line as the dark diagonals. So we'll put our dark here and we'll put our light here. Now we just have these half rectangle triangles to deal with. Let's go back to the draw. We know these are rectangles, so we're going to draw a line halfway in the middle of this grid space. So let's draw one line. And we see that we are cutting this rectangle in half on the diagonal, and we're going from the left to the right, the upper left to the lower right. So we'll come over here and we're at the upper left of this rectangle, and we're going to go down to the lower right. And the one next to it is the exact same thing. So we'll do that. And let's go color this now. And this is a really dark color, so I'm going to use this. Now it's starting to look like the block. Let's go back to draw. And let's look at these half rectangle triangles and pay attention to the angle. So let's cut it in half first. And this angle goes from the upper left to the lower right as well, but it's positioned differently, so that's why it looks different. So I go to, here's the rectangle, upper left to lower right. And the one at the bottom is the same thing. We'll just do that. So now let's color this in. And it's starting to look very familiar. So let's go ahead and draw in the other two. And so just take your time and draw what you know first, and then just keep comparing it to the picture. Because when I first did this one, I had all these rectangles going the wrong direction. Okay, let's put this on here, cut it in half, and upper left, lower right, upper left, lower right. Okay, now that doesn't look like much until we color it. So let's put our color in here. And now there is our block. And see, it looks exactly like this block here. And what they've done is they've rotated them so that the dark fabrics of the half square triangle are meeting together here, and the light fabrics are meeting together here. Now, what you'll notice is this quilt it looks like it's wavy. And what gives you the effect of that wave or that curve are these half rectangle triangles. They seem to connect to each other in a wavy manner. So that's how it's done. So what you need to look at too when you're figuring out fabric for this, if you look at this half rectangle, I'll call it HRT, and this HRT, you see they're kind of mirror images of each other. And if you're looking at quilt notes and you go to the common units for the half rectangle triangles, you'll see that you get a left and a right facing half rectangle triangle. And these are cut, the left facing are cut with the fabrics right side up, and the right facing with the right side down. So that's the only difference. So you actually have, here's one pair, here's another pair of left and right, and then on this side we repeated it. So you have 4 pairs of left and right facing half rectangle triangles. So this is a really neat quilt. I would like to make this quilt. This is the only picture I've ever found of this quilt. I don't know who made the quilt or who posted it. So if there's something else out there, then let me know. So let's recap what we have for this block. In this block, we have 4 half square triangles. We have 1 4 patch. And we have 4 sets of left, right, half rectangle triangles. And the 4 sets means you have 8 of the half rectangle triangles in total. Okay, so let's go to the next one. I think this is the last one for this video. Sometimes it gives you the whole picture of the block, so there's no guesswork. You know exactly what the block looks like. Here it is colored, and here it is just drawn out. And if you look at, if I take 4 of these blocks together, this is what 4 blocks together looks like. So that gives you the effect of this square on point. Draw this on electric quilt, new block. And this looks like a 3x3 grid, 3 across and 3 down. So let's change it to 3x3. And then let's start filling in what we have. We have 2 flying geese on this square. So we'll just cut this in half first. So we have our rectangles, and then we'll draw in our geese for both of them. And pay attention to the direction of the geese. Then we have a square in the center, right here, and a half square triangle in this corner. Now let's go down here. We have a square, a quarter square triangle, and another square. So we'll put our quarter square triangle in the square, and then here's another half square triangle, and then 2 more flying geese in this corner. Okay, so now let's color it. Not too many surprises here. Make it brown. So, and again, we're paying attention to where our fabric is placed. Otherwise, you won't get the design. And see, I forgot to draw my one little line here. Let's go back to color. There, now we have the block. So in here we have 4 flying geese. We have 2 half square triangles, 1 quarter square triangle, and 4 squares. So I hope this helps you in trying to find blocks from a quilt picture. I know you can do this, so just practice on things that you see and see how you can come up with things. And if you have any questions, be sure to ask me in the comments or send me an email, and I'm happy to answer all your questions. So for those of you in the U.S., have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you after Thanksgiving. Thank you for watching.
Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.